Her laughter could fill an entire hallway. Teachers paused mid-step when they heard it. Classmates turned their heads, smiling instinctively, because Mia Johnson had that effect on people. 17 years old, with a glow that seemed untouchable, she carried herself like nothing in the world could dim her. At least, that's what everyone believed. Mia had perfected the mask. The wide smile, the confident nod, the quick jokes that lifted any awkward moment. To the outside world, she was the girl who had it all. Straight A grades, friends who adored her, parents who showed her off like a trophy. To anyone watching, her life was a highlight reel. But behind closed doors, when the noise faded and the curtains shut, the mask came off. And the silence that followed was heavier than any applause she got in public. At night, Mia sat at her desk with a worn leather diary. The pages carried words she could never speak aloud. Scribbled sentences of exhaustion, of self-doubt, of a hollow sadness she couldn't explain. "I feel invisible," one entry read. "I'm drowning, but everyone thinks I'm flying." She wiped away the tears before closing the book, because tomorrow demanded another performance, and she knew her role by heart. If you've ever worn a smile to hide your pain, don't stay silent. Hit subscribe so more people hear stories like this. The next morning, the show began again. At school, her friends clustered around her locker, waiting for her jokes. "Mia, you always make mornings better," one said. She grinned, tossed her hair back, and replied with a line that made them laugh. Inside, her chest felt heavy, like she was suffocating under their expectations. In class, her teachers singled her out as the example. "Notice how Mia solved the equation perfectly," they'd say. Applause, recognition, pressure. Because once people crown you as flawless, any stumble feels like a public failure. Her parents weren't much different. At dinner, her father said, "Our daughter will go far. She never complains, she never makes mistakes." Her mother nodded proudly. "She's the strong one." And Mia smiled, holding her fork steady as her stomach churned. She wanted to scream, "I'm not strong, I'm tired, I'm breaking," but the words stayed buried. The truth was simple. Nobody wanted the real Mia. They wanted the version of her that made them comfortable, the perfect student, the cheerful friend, the model daughter. So she gave them what they wanted and hid the rest in her diary. If you've ever felt like nobody sees the real you, drop a comment. Your words might help someone else feel less alone. The diary grew thicker with each entry. "Everyone laughed at my joke today. I laughed too. Then I cried in the bathroom because I don't feel real. I wish I could stop pretending, but if I do, they'll all be disappointed." The words cut deeper each night, but every morning Mia polished her mask again. A perfect smile, a perfect performance. Until the day the mask slipped. It was during a class presentation. Mia had rehearsed for hours, staying up past midnight to memorize every line. She was determined to prove, once again, that she was the best. When the teacher called her name, she walked to the front of the room, posture straight, smile ready. The first line came out strong. The second, a little shakier. Then her mind went blank. She froze. Dozens of eyes stared at her waiting. She stuttered, tried to recover, but the words wouldn't come. Her hands shook as silence filled the room. A few classmates snickered. Someone whispered, "Guess she's human after all." Her cheeks burned. She forced a laugh, brushed it off like it was nothing, and stumbled through the rest. Outwardly, she survived the moment. Inside, it felt like a collapse. That night, her diary entry was longer than usual. "I failed today. They saw me slip. They laughed. I can't keep this up much longer. I don't know who I am without the mask. I don't even know if there's anything left of me underneath it." The mask had protected her for years, but now it was cracking, and Mia didn't know if anyone would care about the girl behind it. If you've ever been afraid to show your real self, share this video. It might reach someone who needs to hear it today. Mia's story begins where so many others do. On the surface, everything looks perfect, but perfection is often the heaviest disguise. And as the cracks in her mask widened, the question wasn't if it would break, but when, and at what cost. If this beginning makes you think of someone you know, check in on them. Sometimes the happiest smile hides the deepest pain.
Mia walked through the school halls the next morning with her usual smile painted on, but inside, she was still replaying the failed presentation. Her classmates had already forgotten it. To them, it was a small slip, nothing unusual. But for Mia, it was proof that the mask she wore wasn't as strong as she thought. Her friends surrounded her as always. "You okay, Mia? You looked nervous yesterday," one asked lightly. She shrugged it off with a practiced laugh. "Yeah, I just blinked. It happens." They nodded, bought the performance, and moved on to their own gossip. Nobody saw the way her hand gripped the strap of her backpack until her knuckles turned white. At home, her parents didn't even mention it. Her father read the newspaper, her mother washed dishes, and Mia sat silently at the dinner table. She wanted someone to notice her quiet, to ask if she was fine, but the conversation stayed fixed on bills and weekend plans. The mask held, but inside, it was splintering. If you've ever wanted someone to notice your silence instead of your smile, hit subscribe so more stories like this can be heard. Mia's days were a cycle of expectations. At school, teachers praised her constantly. "Class, notice how Mia's work is always neat, always correct. She's a role model." Each word of praise pressed on her like a weight. She smiled in response, but the smile no longer felt natural. It felt like armor. Her friends leaned on her too. When someone had a bad day, Mia was the one who listened, who cracked a joke to cheer the mood. "You always know how to cheer people up," they'd say. She smiled, but a thought echoed in her mind. Who's going to cheer me up? At home, her parents' pride came with an unspoken demand. "You'll make it to a top university, Mia," her father said. "You're so reliable." Her mother chimed in, "You never give us trouble like other kids." The words stung. Trouble. That's what honesty would be. If she admitted she was struggling, they would see her as broken, as less than the daughter they boasted about. So she stayed quiet. In the privacy of her room, the diary absorbed her real voice. The entries grew darker as the weeks went by. "I'm tired of seeing perfection. Everyone sees me as perfect, but I feel like a fraud." Today, Ava asked me to help her with homework. I said yes, but I wanted to scream no. I can't even say no to my best friend. I wish someone would look past my smile and just ask if I'm okay, but they won't. They don't want the answer. The ink blurred as her tears fell on the paper. She closed the diary quickly each night, terrified her parents might find it. The last thing she wanted was for them to read her truth. If you've ever hidden your pain in a notebook or a secret place, comment below. Your voice matters here. It wasn't just the big presentation. Little cracks began to show everywhere. In gym class, Mia skipped laps, pretending she had a stomachache. In group projects, she volunteered to do all the work, not because she wanted to, but because she feared letting anyone down. Her friends noticed small things. She laughed less, she spoke softer, but they brushed it off. "Mia's probably just tired," they'd say. And she nodded, letting them believe it. One afternoon, while walking home, Mia stopped at the park. She sat on a bench watching children play, their laughter loud and unfiltered. They envied them, the freedom to feel whatever they wanted without judgment. For a moment, she let her smile fade completely. Her face sagged, heavy, unmasked. But when someone walked past, she quickly fixed it again, afraid of being seen as weak. The demands piled higher. Exams were coming. College applications loomed. Teachers expected her to lead the debate team. Her parents expected her to ace every test. And her friends expected her to keep being the light in every room. Mia felt like she was living in a glass box, everyone watching her from the outside. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't scream. And every time she tapped the glass, hoping someone would notice, they only applauded her for how polished she looked behind it. That night, her diary entry cut deeper than before. I want to disappear, not because I don't love people, but because I can't keep being what they want me to be. I'm breaking, and nobody even notices. She slammed the diary shut and shoved it under her pillow. For the first time, she wondered if there was a way out of this that didn't involve tomorrow. To her friends, Mia was the same girl, smiling, laughing, pushing everyone forward. To her parents, she was the perfect daughter. To her teachers, she was the example. But in her private world, she was unraveling thread by thread. The cracks in her perfect image were widening, and if someone didn't notice soon, the mask might not just slip, it might shatter completely. If you've ever felt like the world only loves the version of you that's not real, share this story. Someone you know might be carrying the same hidden weight. Perfection is a prison. Mia's story shows how invisible chains tighten every time someone expects you to be flawless. She wore her smile like armor, but armor gets heavy, and with each passing day, her shoulders bent lower under the weight. Her diary entries grew darker, her eyes grew duller. The cracks in the mask widened, and though no one else could see it, Mia knew something inside her was dangerously close to breaking. If this chapter made you think of someone in your life who always says they're fine, check in on them today. Don't wait until it's too late.
Mia had always carried the weight of expectations, but as the semester deepened, that weight turned unbearable. Her grades were slipping, not drastically, but enough for her teachers to frown. "This isn't like you, Mia," they'd say, their disappointment cutting deeper than any insult. At home, her parents noticed too. "You need to focus," her father urged. "You're smarter than this." The words were meant to motivate, but to Mia, they felt like chains tightening around her chest. Her friends weren't much different. When one of them broke up with a boyfriend, Mia was the one expected to cheer her up. "You're so good at making us laugh," they'd say. "We need you." But Mia had nothing left to give. She was exhausted, drained, empty. Yet she smiled anyway, because it was easier to fake joy than to admit she had none left. The diary entries turned sharper, almost frantic. "Today, I walked through the halls and felt like a ghost. Everyone smiled at me, but nobody looked at me. Not really. I wish I could tell someone, but I don't know how. What if they laugh? What if they think I'm weak? Maybe I am weak." Her handwriting grew shaky, the pages filled with words scratched out in frustration. She didn't even try to make them neat anymore. The diary had stopped being a secret journal. It had become a silent scream. At school, she withdrew more. She skipped lunch with her friends, hiding in the bathroom stall instead. She turned her phone off for hours, ignoring messages. But when she returned, she laughed it off. "Sorry, I was studying." Nobody questioned it. Nobody looked closer. It happened on a Wednesday. The sky was gray, the air heavy with the threat of rain. Mia woke up already tired, already defeated. At breakfast, her mother reminded her, "You've got that debate competition soon. Don't let your team down." Mia nodded silently, forcing down a bite of toast she couldn't taste. At school, the pressure mounted. In math class, she froze on a problem she would normally solve in seconds. "Mia?" the teacher pressed, expecting brilliance. Her silence stretched. Students shifted uncomfortably. She mumbled something, cheeks burning. "We'll talk after class," the teacher said firmly. During lunch, her friends teased each other and laughed, but Mia barely spoke. "You're quiet today," Ava noticed, nudging her. Mia forced a small smile. "Just tired." Ava nodded, satisfied. Conversation moved on. The moment passed. That night, Mia sat at her desk staring at the blank page in her diary. Finally, she wrote, "I can't do this anymore. Every day feels like acting in a play I never auditioned for. I'm tired of pretending.
I don't even know who I am anymore." 2 nights later, she locked herself in her room. The laughter, the pressure, the endless performance, it all crashed down at once. She curled on her bed, hugging her diary like a lifeline. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered to herself, "I can't keep this up. I can't." The thought terrified her, but it also lingered. What if she didn't have to wake up tomorrow and wear the mask again? The house was quiet. Her parents thought she was studying. Her friends assumed she was busy. But inside that room, Mia was unraveling completely, breaking apart in silence. If this moment makes you feel heavy, remember, there is always hope. Share this story to remind someone else that they are not alone. The next morning, Mia dragged herself to school. Her eyes were swollen, her smile thin and brittle. Most people didn't notice, but Ava did. During English class, Mia laughed at a joke the teacher made, but the laugh didn't reach her eyes. Ava's gaze lingered. After class, she cornered her. "Mia," she asked softly, "are you okay? I mean, really okay?" For the first time, someone had asked the question she'd been waiting for. Her throat tightened. She wanted to say yes, to wave it off like always, but the mask felt too heavy. For a second, she hesitated. That second was enough to change everything. That night, her diary read, "Today, Ava asked me if I'm really okay. I almost told her the truth. Almost. I don't know why it's so hard to say it. Maybe because once I start, I won't be able to stop." It was the closest she had ever come to opening up. The mask hadn't fallen completely, but a crack had widened, and through it, a tiny ray of light slipped in. If you've ever been saved by someone simply asking if you're okay, comment below. Your story could inspire someone else to speak up. Every mask eventually cracks. For Mia, the breaking point had come and gone in silence. But Ava's question marked the beginning of something new. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to carry the weight alone. The world still saw perfection, but behind the smile, the real Mia was finally beginning to whisper for help. If this chapter made you think of a friend who always says, "I'm fine," check in on them today. One question could change their life.
Ava's question lingered long after the school bell rang. "Are you really okay?" It was the kind of question Mia had wanted someone to ask for years, yet when it finally came, she didn't know how to answer. She walked home that afternoon replaying the moment. Ava's eyes weren't casual. They weren't filled with curiosity or judgment. They carried something Mia hadn't felt in a long time: genuine concern. And it scared her, because if she admitted the truth, the mask she had worn so carefully might crumble for good. At dinner, her parents chatted about work. Her father complained about deadlines. Her mother listed groceries they needed. Mia sat quietly, spoon pushing food around her plate. Not once did they ask how she was, and all she could think about was Ava's voice echoing in her head. If you've ever wished someone would look closer and really see you, don't stay silent. Hit subscribe so more people hear stories like this. The next morning, Ava caught up with Mia by her locker. "You didn't answer me yesterday," she said gently. "I meant it. Are you okay?" Mia's instinct was to smile, laugh it off, and say she was fine, but the words stuck in her throat. She looked down, eyes burning. I don't know," she whispered. It wasn't much, but it was more honesty than she had given anyone in years. Ava didn't push. She just nodded, slipping her arm through Mia's. "That's okay. You don't have to know. But if you ever want to talk, I'm here." For the first time, Mia felt the smallest crack of relief. Someone had seen through the mask and hadn't run away. That night, her diary sounded different. "Today I told Ava I don't know if I'm okay." Just those words felt impossible, but I said them. And she didn't laugh. She didn't tell me to snap out of it. She just stayed. It wasn't a solution, but it was a start. For the first time, her handwriting didn't slope downward in despair. It steadied. It felt less like a scream and more like a whisper of possibility. If you've ever felt a weight lift just by saying a few words, leave a comment. Your story might give someone courage to speak up. Ava didn't let the moment fade. A week later, she quietly suggested, "Maybe you should talk to the school counselor. I can come with you if you want." Mia's chest tightened. The thought of telling an adult terrified her. What if they told her parents? What if people thought she was broken? But Ava's steady presence gave her courage. The next day, during study period, the two of them walked to the counselor's office together. The room was quiet, warm, filled with books and soft lighting. The counselor, Mrs. Lee, greeted them with a calm smile. "Mia, come in. What's on your mind?" Mia froze. Her throat clenched, palms sweating. Ava squeezed her hand. "Just start anywhere," she whispered. And Mia did. Not everything, not all at once, but she admitted she felt tired all the time, that she didn't feel as happy as people thought, that she sometimes felt like she was disappearing. Mrs. Lee listened without interrupting, nodding gently, her voice steady and kind. When Mia finished, Mrs. Lee said softly, "Mia, what you're feeling doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And you don't have to carry it alone." Tears streamed down Mia's face, but for the first time, they weren't tears of isolation. They were tears of release. Over the next few weeks, Mia began meeting with Mrs. Lee regularly. Sometimes she barely spoke, staring at the floor while the counselor guided her with patient questions. Other times, words poured out of her like floodgates opening. She wrote in her diary after each session. "It feels strange to say things out loud, scary, but also lighter. Mrs. Lee told me it's okay not to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. I don't think I've ever believed that before. Ava waited outside for me today. I don't know what I'd do without her." The diary still held sadness, but it also carried flickers of hope. The ink no longer bled desperation alone. It carried survival. If this part gives you hope, share this story. Someone you know might need to hear that talking really can help. Ava didn't let the moment fade. Mia still wore her smile, but it wasn't always a mask now. Sometimes it was genuine. She laughed with Ava in the cafeteria, but not to please others because she wanted to. She raised her hand in class not to prove perfection, but to share what she actually knew. Her parents remained oblivious, still praising her for being the strong one, but Mia had stopped needing their validation as much. She was building strength in different places. In Ava's support, in Mrs. Lee's guidance, and in her own small steps of honesty. The change wasn't visible to everyone, but inside, the cracks in the mask weren't just widening, they were slowly being filled with something real. One afternoon, Ava and Mia sat on the bleachers after school. The sun dipping low, Ava joked about something silly and Mia burst into laughter, genuine, unfiltered, belly-deep laughter. She froze afterwards, startled by how real it felt. "That," Ava said softly, "sounded like you." Mia blinks, realizing Ava was right. For the first time in years, her laugh wasn't an armor, it was hers. The path wasn't easy. Mia still wrote dark words in her diary. She still battled nights when the mask felt heavy. But she had something she never had before. Someone who listened, and someone who cared enough to stay. Her story proved a truth often forgotten. Sometimes healing begins not with solutions, but with silence broken. With one question, with one friend who refuses to look away. If this chapter reminded you of a time someone truly listened to you, drop a comment. Your story might be the spark that encourages another to open up.
Mia still woke up some mornings with the heaviness pressing against her chest. Recovery wasn't a straight path. it came in waves. Some days she felt lighter, able to laugh with Ava, able to walk into school without rehearsing her smile in the mirror. Other days, the mask threatened to return, whispering that it would always be easier to pretend. But the difference now was that she no longer carried it alone. Ava's friendship and Mrs. Lee's counseling gave her something she hadn't known before, a safe place to be imperfect. If you've ever learned that healing takes time and patience, hit subscribe so more people hear stories like this. Her diary pages told the story of her transformation. The early entries were filled with despair. "I'm drowning. I can't keep this up." Now, new words appeared between the dark lines. "I told Ava about my panic today. She didn't judge me. She just listened. Mrs. Lee helped me understand that feelings don't make me weak. They make me real. I laughed today, and it wasn't fake. I didn't even realize it until afterward." The diary was no longer just a container for pain. It had become a record of progress, slow, fragile, but real. One Friday evening, Mia and Ava attended a school event. Music played, students danced, the gym buzzed with laughter. Normally, Mia would have put on her brightest performance, but halfway through the night, she caught herself genuinely smiling. No performance, no act. Ava noticed. "You look different," she whispered. "That smile, it's real this time." Mia froze, then laughed softly. For years, her smile had been armor, a disguise. But in that moment, it felt like freedom. If you've ever experienced a smile that came from the heart after a long time, leave a comment. Your story could remind someone else that joy is possible again. Of course, it wasn't perfect. Mia still had bad days. She still wrote heavy thoughts in her diary. There were still moments where she felt like the old mask was creeping back. But now she had the tools to push through. On the worst days, she texted Ava, "Can we talk?" And Ava always replied, "Of course." On the better days, she let herself rest without guilt, learning that being tired didn't make her a failure. Mrs. Lee taught her to recognize the signs of exhaustion and to give herself permission to pause. Every small victory mattered. Every honest word spoken was a step forward. To most of her classmates, Mia was still the bright, cheerful girl. To her parents, she remained the daughter who made them proud. That image hadn't changed much, but inside, Mia no longer measured herself by what others expected. The smile she gave her friends wasn't always perfect, and that was okay. Because sometimes it wasn't a mask, it was her truth. Looking back, Mia realized how close she had come to breaking completely. How many nights she had written words in her diary that felt like final goodbyes. The thought chilled her, but it also gave her strength, because she had survived those nights. Her story wasn't one of instant healing or magical solutions. It was a story of small cracks in the mask that eventually let light in. It was a story of one friend who refused to look away, and one adult who knew how to listen. And it was proof that even the strongest-looking people can be fighting battles no one sees. If this reflection resonates with you, share the story right now. It might reach someone who needs to hear that survival is possible. Months later, Mia wrote an entry that felt different from all the rest. "I still struggle. I still have days where the mask feels easier than honesty. But I've learned something important. I'm not alone. I don't have to hide behind perfection. My smile doesn't have to be a disguise anymore. Sometimes it can mean joy. Sometimes it can mean survival. And that's enough." She closed the diary gently, for once not in tears, but with a quiet sense of hope. Mia's story is not just hers. It belongs to anyone who has ever hidden pain behind a smile,
Anyone who has ever carried the weight of expectations while feeling hollow inside. It reminds us of something simple yet vital. One question, one listener, one friend can be the difference between silence and survival. So the next time you see someone laughing the loudest, smiling the brightest, remember, their story may be heavier than you think. Ask, listen, stay. Because sometimes the smallest act of noticing can save a life. If you believe no one should have to hide their pain behind a mask, comment below and share this video. Someone out there is waiting for that reminder.